webinar today highlighting AP automation. My name is Kelly Bergman, and I'd like to quickly address a few housekeeping items before I hand the floor over to our presenter. Currently, all attendees are in listen-only mode. As we go along, you can type questions into the chat section on your menu bar. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. This is being recorded and will be posted on our website within the next day or so, and our YouTube channel. If you're not familiar, go check that out as well. With that all done, it is now my pleasure to introduce Beanworks, our go-to for AP automation, as they not only integrate seamlessly with Sage 100, but they also save you time and allow you real-time visibility from POs to payments, just to name a few things. We are very lucky today to have account exec Joey Glazer presenting today, and since he's the expert, I'm going to hand the floor off to him.
Great, thank you so much, Kelly. So again, my name's Joey here at Beanworks and also Sage AP Automation for our Sage clients. I'm a senior account executive. I've been with Beanworks for around three years, and my role here is mainly to help clients discover the wonders of AP automation, and I do things like product demonstrations and one-on-one meetings. So let's get right into it. In today's webinar, I'll be going over a guide produced by Level Research, exploring current fraud trends in the market. So we're going to be talking about how accounts payable impacts companies of various sizes, different types of fraud, and the critical steps that you can adopt and establish active controls for accounts payable. At the end of this session and webinar, we're going to be going through a product demo of Sage AP Automation, and then followed by a time for questions and answers. So let's jump right into it. AP fraud is one of the most common types of fraud, and it's also one of the easiest to perpetrate. Since the majority of the money leaving a company legitimately goes through the AP department, organizations with robust systems for verifying invoices against purchase orders and evidence of goods and services are most likely to fall prey to AP fraud. Repercussions can range from financial losses and compromised data to a fragile customer base and long-term reputational damage for the brand. Research undertaken by the Association of Financial Professionals found that 82% of organizations in North America alone were victims of attempted or actual payment fraud, and that's a 20% increase from 2014. In the same year, more than $7 billion in losses were recorded in over 2,500 cases worldwide in 23 industries and businesses of all sizes, and around half of them were attributed to an internal control weakness. The true cost of global fraud is definitely higher, considering it does not factor in post-fraud costs such as business closures, crisis management and communications, media management, and reputational risk, which can be severe, expensive, and require significant reputation building strategies afterwards. So here's one example. In 2017, MacEwan University in Edmonton was blindsided by a multi-million-dollar fraud. So how did this happen? Well, it was a simple phishing email. The university was in the middle of a massive construction project, and an AP employee received an email that looked like it was from one of the construction firms, asking them to update their bank details. So they did, and payments went through to this new fraudulent account until the actual construction company asked why they hadn't received payment, and that's when the fraud was detected. So with the increased sophistication of criminals and the lack of adoption of fraud prevention technologies, it's making it harder for organizations and individuals to identify a scam. So how does AP, how and where does AP fraud take place? So here's a few examples. Phishing scam. So a phishing scam is an attempt to access a company's account or fraudulently gain access to sensitive information. A certain email might appear to be legitimate in an attempt to collect and steal personal information. So that MacEwan University case we discussed is an example of online phishing. But companies should be aware of messages asking for confidential information like account passwords, financial info, PIN numbers, and also be cautious of unsolicited emails that require you to click through. Next, we have duplicate payments. So this is one of the top payment-related pain points for companies. According to a Level Research report, vendors are paid more than once due to sometimes you receive the same invoice multiple times or to an employee error. If a vendor knows that your payment controls are lacking, it can try and send the same invoice multiple times, hoping that no one will notice. Especially the first few times, it's easy to pass this off as an error. The Department of Health and Human Services Inspector General estimated that Medicare made $89 million in potential duplicate payments in 1998. Next, we have unapproved vendors. So this leads to false payments to those who should not be receiving payment. An employee could set up a fictitious or unauthorized vendor account and submit invoices or process payments for non-existent or fraudulent goods or services. Many companies only require vendors to email their invoices to an AP email. There aren't any checks in place to ensure that those invoices are actually coming from a legitimate vendor. False billing is where an employee might be creating false invoices which lead to a self-payment. These invoices may include false charges, or they may disguise purchases under vague or repeated invoice line items. The employee may also be working alone or in collusion with a third party. Fraudulent payments is initiated by employees, usually by check or ACH, which are the two most commonly used formats in business-to-business payments. In August, a woman was found guilty of stealing $1 million from her employer over a 14-year period where she used fraudulent check scheme to divert payments into her own bank accounts. Companies should make it a regular practice to search and scrutinize rapid or unusual changes on a regular basis. And finally, the last one, tampering with financial reporting. This is where an employee may change financial data after the payment is completed. In one case in Rochester, New York, an employee profited by over $48,000 by making altering the invoices that the supplier made and inflating the charges. So now, after we find out these different types of frauds and the implications, it's time for our first poll. So if we'll bring up the poll, we're going to see what types of fraud you might have experienced in the past. So we've got a couple options up on the screen. So an inappropriate employee expense, this is where someone submits an expense that actually shouldn't be submitted. A phishing scheme, which is where, as we showed earlier, it might be a phishing email that's sent to you, or duplicate payments if maybe an invoice is sent twice and maybe it was accidentally paid twice as well. So we'll leave this poll open for another few seconds, so please select one of the options. All right, just maybe another 5 more seconds and then we'll close the poll. All right, so let's close the poll, and if we can view the results, wow, it looks like the phishing schemes or typically phishing emails are the most common. Was the highest one there with everyone reporting a phishing email coming in, or maybe being suspect to actually clicking on one or giving any information. All right, so we can move on now. So next, the example we're going to share here is one about fraud by an employee in terms of credit card embezzlement. So in 2019, a longtime employee at a California-based company misused their commercial credit card to conduct unauthorized payments of around $143,000. The embezzlement was discovered by the owner, who then received the credit card statement and noted the purchases. So small and medium-sized enterprises are more reliant on paper invoices and manual processes, which actually makes the risk greater for these type of companies in terms of manipulation and invoice tampering. In cases like these, some red flags that should prompt additional questions should be if transactions occurred out of regular office hours, or payments are going to locations that the company does not normally do business with, or if someone makes changes to the vendor, or if there's changes in terms of frequency or size of payment. So now we're going to go a little more into depth into what some of the research says from that study by Level Research into AP fraud. So these are some of the manual AP process challenges that a lot of companies are dealing with within their AP department. So those are going to be things like the manual data entry errors. So no matter how reliable your workforce is, occasionally there will be cases of human error. If you're still relying on manual accounts payable processes, you may find that there's more errors in your data than you may think. Automating this process can prevent you from sacrificing both time and money. Next is inefficiency to manage and store information. You can go through a lot of data in the AP department every day. Manually storing and tracking these documents is definitely challenging for the accounting team. How is all that vital information stored at your company? How do you access it when you need to look back at past information? A lot of times with the clients I talk with, they've got filing cabinets stacked with paper, or they've got some online sorting where they'll have to name each file and then sort it into an online folder. If your business doesn't have a solid information management system in place for your accounts payable data, you may find yourself struggling to put together simple reports or to double check vital information. The slow approval processing. Invoice approval is a crucial component to the AP process, especially to mitigate fraud. Although approvals are important to protect the organization and to prevent theft and other problems, they can be long, slow, and frustrating for accounting teams. The vulnerability to fraud. So fraudulent billing is a major challenge faced by AP teams worldwide. From check tampering to invoices that don't match the other expenses faced by our businesses, fraud is rampant in AP, especially in manual-based processes. And the lack of visibility. Obviously, companies and accounting teams need to be able to track their AP. If your organization is still using manual AP, it can be extremely difficult to track AP through the entire process. Implementing automated AP provides higher levels of visibility and allows you to easily track invoices from purchase through to payment. Finance platforms give finance leaders full control and visibility over the entire AP process, which better fuels decision-making. According to the study, small and medium-sized enterprises are most likely to accept paper invoices, more than larger organizations and the total average. So that's SME, small and medium enterprises. They also fall into a similar pattern with invoice data entry, mostly importing data manually. 86% of small and medium-sized enterprises import manual data entry in their AP process. With 79% share, manual data entry and inefficient processes was identified as the top pain point among small and medium-sized enterprises, followed by manual approval at 61% and missing invoices at 48%. The hard cost of AP processes, both average cost per invoice and the percentage of discounts uncaptured, drastically decrease as automation maturity increases. When AP is operating manually, or as an organization lacks fraud prevention measures, there are many processes and control gaps in which fraud can take place. So now let's look at what some of those most pressing AP challenges are. Research identified that the top pain points related to AP include duplicate invoices and/or payments, followed by many others that pertain to fraud and risk management, including reliance on paper-based processes and invoice to payment matching. AP fraud impacts companies and their customers, and they do not discriminate between company sizes. There's a good chance that many of you here present have experienced AP fraud in more ways than one. So we've got another poll coming up here. So the next poll is going to ask about what are some of the top challenges in your AP department to gain a better understanding of what some of your top challenges are. So we'll bring up the next poll here. So what are your top payment challenges? And you can select all that apply. So we've got invoice to payment matching, reliance on manual or paper-based processes, duplicate payments, so that's where a vendor is paid more than once, sometimes receiving an invoice multiple times, tampering with financial reporting, so that's where an employee may change the financial data after payments are completed, and compliance and regulatory reporting. So again, we'll leave this poll open another 10 to 15 seconds. And again, you can select all that apply. All right, and 5 more seconds for that poll. All right, so we can close the poll now. And we'll take a look at the results. And it looks here like the vast majority here, almost everyone, around over 80%, selected reliance on manual or paper-based processes as one of your top challenges for payments and in AP. So that's great. We're going to cover that a little bit more today as we get into our software demonstration. So let's move on to how we can help mitigate fraud. So first step here and problem that we can help overcome is going to be automating invoice to payment matching. Accounts payable invoice matching is the process of matching your vendor invoice, purchase order in some cases, and product receipt information. Matching each invoice to a purchase order and receipt will help you prevent paying for fraudulent invoices. By matching, you can match orders with receivables accurately so that you only pay for what you actually get. So in the case of Sage AP Automation, we use a combination of smart coding and human auditors to intelligently code invoices, along with automatic PO to invoice matching for fast AP process. So that means if you have some purchase orders that are created and approved in advance, you'll be able to match up those invoices that are received from your vendors to make sure they are real and legitimate. Next is duplicate invoices. So how do you combat duplicate invoices and payments? You might be paying the same bill sometimes more than once. You may receive duplicate invoices for the same order, but with different invoice numbers, or receive something that's already been paid. If a vendor receives a monthly payment from an organization, a defrauder may try to process it more than once and transfer the funds into their own account. This might seem like an error for the accounting team, but fraudsters may take advantage of this weakness in payment controls, and they'll try to submit the invoice multiple times, hoping it'll get paid. Some tasks like crossing or cross-checking every item on an invoice can be assigned to an automated tool such as AP Automation, as it can be quite time-consuming if you are matching these all manually. Sage AP Automation uses a two-way sync with your existing accounting software, so you can verify which invoices that have been paid. Our software identifies duplicate invoices and helps flag duplicate payments. With these features, your accounting teams can reduce spreadsheets and duplicated data entry with purchase requisitions stored directly in Sage AP Automation and having the approval process happen all here in one place. And last but not least, how do you mitigate fraud and security issues? While AP fraud is an unfortunate risk that comes when conducting a business, identifying the signs and implementing controls can help businesses detect and limit financial losses. Accounting professionals are an integral part of this process. Equipping your accounting team with the right skills, knowledge, and tools to recognize the warning signs can go a long way in maximizing a business cash flow, streamlining the AP process, increasing transparency, and removing the multiple layers of approval channels. Your company may have multiple approval channels and controls installed for the AP process. With hundreds of invoices created each month, this manual process can become quite cumbersome for the accounting team to handle. Sage AP Automation gives your AP team structure, improved trackability, and defined reporting into your company's accounting system. It can provide a defined end-to-end visibility, helping your accounting team focus on higher value tasks and view AP related data on a real-time basis. You can track which approval channels are taking the longest time and which invoices are stuck on taking longer than the standard timeline. And here's a story from one of my favorite entrepreneurs, Mark Cuban. He is a very successful entrepreneur and was recently speaking at an accounts payable fraud event that took place actually within his first company, Micro Solutions. So accounts payable checks were given to a receptionist to pay suppliers, and the receptionist actually forged those checks to pay herself, leaving the company with just $2,000 left in his bank account. So this is a scenario that Mark Cuban ultimately said helped him get more serious about his business ventures early on. So not everyone wants to go through something like this to make sure that they have their proper systems in place. But this is an example of a company really realizing early on the vulnerability that they had to fraud and improving their processes in order to scale and now become a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate. So now we'll talk a bit more about Sage AP Automation and what we can do to help your AP team. So we'll add transparency and tighter controls throughout the financial process to strengthen your organization against risk and loss. Once organizations adopt AP Automation, they greatly improve their risk management capabilities through improved visibility, tracking, and controlling of invoices and payment processes. This leads to benefits like fewer duplicate payments and lower risk of check and ACH fraud, as well as more efficiency for employees and lower cost to the business overall. We can all agree that AP automation doesn't have to be the most chaotic department in your business. By opting for automation, increasing visibility, and using solid digital systems, you can significantly improve your entire AP department. It makes it easy to see exactly where those vital funds are going and how they're being processed and managed. But don't just take my word for it. I'll actually show you, we'll jump into the software and show you what it looks like. All right, so we've jumped directly into the software here for Sage AP Automation. You'll notice I actually just switched tabs. So this is web-based. You'll have access to this from any web browser. The first screen you'll see here when you log on to Sage AP Automation is called our dashboard. So this will give you user-based metrics of all the users within the system. So you can see how long it's taking them to do various tasks, such as process an invoice and approve invoices. So in this case, we've got our list of users. We've got one of them here, Tom Green. He's the bottleneck in our process. He's spending on average 139 days to approve an invoice. So luckily, he's just a made-up user here. And let's hope there's no Tom Green within your organizations. But if there was, this would be a good indication of the bottleneck. So we could have a conversation with them to try and reduce that, improve upon the process, and really speed up the AP process. So if you ever do get calls from your vendors asking why an invoice hasn't been paid yet, but it's stuck for approval, this will help keep our employees accountable in order to get those vendors paid on time. So next we're going to do a quick overview of the system structure and the modules before we get into some of the modules in a little bit more detail. So you can see here on the left-hand side, we have three main modules: purchase orders, invoices, and payments. We are working on our fourth module, expenses, set to be released sometime this year. But each of these modules is designed in a very similar way. For example, here within invoices will flow from left to right through these tabs at the top. they'll move from create to in progress to approvals to export and then to archived in that order. And that's going to be very similar throughout. For example, payments, almost the same thing, but in blue. So the goal is to make it very easy and user-friendly for users to pick up and learn the system. In the center of each screen will be your workspace. So in this case here, it's all the users here, or sorry, all the invoices here that are in progress. And on the left-hand side, we've got our filters at the top. So we can filter by any data point we want. We've got status filters, and we have the organizational structure. So this is a really cool feature here, especially if any of you are within companies that have multiple entities, multiple locations, multiple divisions or departments. What we can do is we can connect to all of those at once, and then we can build out this structure to whatever fits your organization. So for example, here you may have multiple entities and multiple departments within each entity. And then you may have users who only need to see certain things. For example, we have one user who might work within Green Bean Co., but just within the marketing department. We could give them access to just view what's within marketing, within their own company and entity, so they won't see anything else when they log on, just what they have access to. Whereas from your point of view, if you're a CFO, an AP manager, controller, or just an AP clerk who's going to be entering invoices, you may just want to see what's in your own department. So you can select all to just view what you have access to. Or for management, they may want to see everything at once, or they can drill down to a specific entity or location just by clicking through these bubbles. So it's up to what you set your permissions into what the users can see, but that can be segmented for every single user to give users just access to what they need to see. And that works very similar for these tabs here at the top. So for example, if you had someone within your organization who was involved in just approving invoices, you could give them access to just view the approvals tab. To make their job really easy, they just log on, approve or reject. They won't see anything else within the system here. All right, so next we'll start going through the process here in a little bit more detail. We'll briefly walk through the purchase order module to show you how we can create purchase orders within our system. So purchase orders are going to be manual with us. You don't have to use purchase orders within our system, but again, it is a best practice in terms of mitigating fraud. And there are going to be two different ways that POs can work. So one of the ways, which I'll go through today, is where we can actually create those POs here within Sage AP Automation. Or the second way will be if you do create POs directly right now within Sage, we can actually import those POs directly in from your Sage software. So you can continue creating those POs within Sage and they'll be directly imported into here. All right, so now we'll go through what it looks like to create a PO here within our system. So if you are using us for POs, you can go through this drop down here, select your vendor from the drop down as well. Select things like a delivery date and a description. I'll just write cleaning service. And then that user can then fill out the line items here so they can set the account code. And this will pull in your list of codes directly in from Sage. So you can select what you're looking for that way. And they can fill out the totals, description, etc., or add multiple line items if they need to. Once that's been finished, they can click Save or Submit for approval. And that will move that purchase order on to the In Progress tab. So here in the In Progress tab, this is where POs will live before they've then been submitted for approval. So once it's been created, but not yet submitted, it will live in here. So I'll open one of these as an example. And so I've moved into a room here on the other side of the office for the webinar, and the internet's a little bit slower here, so I apologize if there's a lag on your end. So if we open up the PO, we'll be then able to make any changes we like. We'll be able to add multiple line items here if we need to. And we can also have a visualization of that purchase order. So it'll assign a PO number, a date, the vendor address, and a logo, as well as a visualization of the line items. So at this point, if that PO is good to go, we can submit that for approval, or we can make changes like splitting line items if we need to, by percentages or equal parts, or by adding backup documentation that will live alongside the PO. Once those POs get submitted for approval, they'll go through an approval workflow, and I'll get into how approvals can be set up a bit later on today. But that purchase order approver, what they'll be able to do is log on here and they can select all the POs and batch approve them with one click or reject. Or they can go into each one in some greater detail. They can open up that PO to view it. And then after that, they'll be able to click on this approve or reject button on the left here directly, so they can click approve or reject on that PO, as well as review the image of the PO itself. Once that purchase order has been fully approved, it moves on to the committed tab. So this is where all those open POs will live, awaiting invoices to match up against them. So you'll have access to view all the open POs in here. As well, it will show us, for example, on this top columns here, the total amount of the POs, the amount that's been drawn down, the amount that's remaining. And then once those purchase orders have been closed, they'll move again into the next tab, which is called closed, and that acts as your historical archive of all the POs that have gone through the system. So here, everything will be stored for you for a period of at least 7 years. So you have access to these POs to view them. As well, you can use these filters on the left to view exactly what you're looking for. And so that's a quick summary of the purchase order module, and I'll be able to show you within the invoice module how we can actually code from those POs and match those POs. But this is how we can create POs if you are creating POs directly within our system. So next we'll jump into how we can get the invoices into our system. So typically invoices can be received one of a couple different ways. A lot of our clients are receiving invoices by email right now, which is a great way to reduce paper. So what you can do is we can provide you with an email address to receive those invoices into. And you can either provide that email directly to your vendors, or if you already have an email address set up, you can set that existing one to forward or to auto forward those invoices into our system. So those ones will come in automatically into our in progress tab. This first tab here is principally for those paper copy invoices if you receive a stack of them in the mail. You can scan those ones in all at once. So whether you have a stack of 5 or a stack of 100, you can scan them all in, drag and drop the file into here and click upload. That will bring in all those invoices all together like this. And if there are each individual invoices, we can just click auto split to move them onto separate lines. And then if we do run into some multi-page invoices, we can just drag and drop as needed. Then we'll just click save and create invoices. So this does save a lot of time traditionally spent at the scanner or managing paper. We can scan those in all together to get those uploaded, and then the system will do the rest. We also do have a third method to get invoices in. We have a mobile app. So you can just snap a photo of an invoice with the app wherever you are in the world. So it doesn't have to be, you don't have to have access to a scanner. You can get invoices uploaded that way. So next is the in progress tab. So this is where invoices will come in, whether they're scanned in, emailed in, or you snapped a photo. They'll all come in here by next business day. So it's an overnight process, and we'll be able to capture a lot of that data for you. So here we can see an image of the invoice. If there's a purchase order, that will show up side by side like this. We'll also be able to capture for you things like the vendor name, the invoice number, the PO number, the dates, due dates, subtotals, totals, and taxes. Which leaves us with just the GL and line item coding left to do. And I'll be able to show you how we can do that in one of a couple different ways, depending on if those invoices are associated with POs or not. So in this case, we've got an invoice alongside a PO. So all we'll need to do to code it is we have this PO adoption button here. That will pop up this window showing us what was coded on that purchase order. So if there's multiple lines, we can just select what we want, or we can select all. So I'll just add this line here by clicking the plus. It will move it down to the line items here for the invoice. Then we can click adopt. So what that does is that will pull the coding directly off the purchase order. So we won't need to do any coding or data entry for this invoice. If that's all going to be good to go, we'll just click save or submit for approval, and that invoice is done, just like that. So how about those invoices that are not associated with POs? So sometimes you may have invoices like your rent invoice or a typical recurring invoice that you don't have a purchase order for. And for those ones, we have different tools available to help you. So if you receive an invoice from a particular vendor and related to one of your companies, if you have multiple, if you receive another invoice next month from the same company and the same vendor, all you'll need to do is click this green smart code button here in the top right. What that does is that remembers how those invoices were coded previously. So it's a single click here to smart code. It'll populate the account, description, all the line items of how it was done previously, or even multiple lines. So one click to smart code, and then we can submit for approval, and that invoice also is done. If, for example, it's going to be coded differently, all we'll need to do is we can go into these fields here, for example, the account code, and this will pull in your list of codes directly in from Sage. So we can, for example, type in the code directly if we knew it. Or even if we didn't know the code, but we knew it was one of our expense accounts or we knew the name, we could type that in here and find all our accounts with the word expense in them. So I can easily find the one I'm looking for, select it, and then submit for approval. We also have a large amount of tools here to help you with this process if you do need to add multiple items or split existing lines by either percentages, equal parts, or amounts. And then we can also add backup documentation to this step, and that will live below the invoice here under backup pages. So this step here, the data entry, coding, and PO match, this is typically where our clients can save the greatest amount of time, because effectively we're getting rid of a lot of that manual aspect of scanning paper, printing paper, and really the data entry. So entering these numbers directly into Sage and physically matching up invoices with purchase orders. Once those POs are then submitted for approval, they'll go to the approval channels. And again, I'll show you how that works in just a second. The approvers would be able to go in here. They can view the invoices to verify them. If there are POs, those will also show up side by side. So they can compare the invoice and the PO. They can review the coding, and then they can click approve or reject. And if they click reject, they're required to leave a comment of why it got rejected to move it on to the next step or to the next approver. If you also want to assign that approver to the ability to make changes, you can set them as a super approver. That will let them, for example, change the account code and then approve without having to reject. So next we'll show you here how we can set up those approval channels. So if you want to customize those channels for your organization, you can customize that to a great level of detail. I've got a whole list of approval channels here. I'll just open one as an example. So here, each of these boxes will be a set of rules. So in this case here, we've got the first box is invoices between $5,000 and $10,000. We then got different departments. We also have lists that are pulled in from Sage. For example, our account code list and our vendor list. So if we wanted certain, for example, certain vendors to be coded to a certain account, we can select them here. We can also run approvals based on if it's been coded to a purchase order or not, and to a certain level of variance from that purchase order. So with this set of rules here, we can then choose who we want to approve it. So right now we have a single step approval. This will be just Sally who approves. So that's a one-step approval. We can then add multiple people if we want. So we can have that go first to Paul, then to Sally. Or maybe we need that to go to our CEO as a third approver. We could set that up like this. Or we can create what we call group approvals, where if you drag multiple users into a single group, that will allow it so that either one of them could approve. So in this case, it'll go first to Paul, then to Sally, then either Jack or Jill could approve. We can also customize the notifications that your approvers will receive. So if you want them to receive an email every time there's an approval, we can set that up. Or maybe there's someone who receives too many approvals each day. They can instead get a daily summary, which will be a single email with all the invoices that they'll need to approve. So once we have these approval channels set up, these approvals will be flowed automatically into the channels. So there'll be no need for your team to send invoices out manually for approval or to track down those approvals. They'll go automatically, and those reminders can be sent automatically as well. So next, the final step here to get those invoices back into Sage is called the export. So what this does, it's really just a final place to review, and you can select what invoices you'd like to send back. What I'll do here is just click export all to send all of them back, and then click data. What that does is that'll send all this invoice data back into Sage. Into the AP module, it will create a batch for you. And we do have what's called the sync tool that runs in the background. So that allows our system to connect with your Sage software. So no need to download or upload any files. It will make a link between the two systems. And it will run on the schedule, or we can open it up and click sync for that sync to happen right away. And I often get this question here about this posting date feature. If you do need to change the posting date for your invoices, that can be done in bulk for invoices or on an invoice by invoice level. And finally, the archive tab. This acts really as your online filing cabinet. It will show all the invoices that have gone through the system, again, stored for at least 7 years. So what you can do is you can run filters. If you want to filter, for example, here we filter by a few different vendors or by different account codes or by a date range or any data point that's available. We can open up those invoices directly to view them like this. Or we can also run reports. So this is a really great feature for management to really track what's going on within the organization and to pull up previous historical data. So you can run a report either as a CSV or a PDF. I'll just run a PDF report here to show you what it looks like. And I'll download that. So if I open up the report, The first page will give me a summary of everything that was selected. In this case, it's 23 invoices, so I can either scroll through the whole report, or I can just click on the hyperlink to bring me down to that page. So I can view an image of the invoice, the header coding, the line item coding, and the approval history. So this is a really good tool for auditors to view the historical data of that invoice. Not only are you going to have a copy of the invoice, but you'll have how it was coded and who approved it. As well, if there was a purchase order, it will show up on the next page. So this is a really good tool for your auditors to determine there's no fraud that was happening. They'll be able to track that data easily with these reports. We also have some clients who give their auditors read-only access to the entire system, so they can just log on, review their invoices without being able to make any changes. And so that's the end of the invoice module, which is really the bread and butter of Sage AP Automation. Payments module we can cover quite quickly here. It's going to be similar to what we saw previously, but for payments. So if you'd like to run your payments through us as well, and the majority of our clients do, we can handle payments by either standard check, by electronic payment such as ACH or EFT, as well as something called a virtual credit card, and that acts as more of a pre-funded debit card. So your vendor will receive an email with a unique credit card number, and they'll run it through as a MasterCard transaction. And for the virtual credit card, we do offer a cashback rebate for that as well. So in the Payments Create tab, you'll be able to select what you'd like to pay. It'll show you your age payables list here, and it will also group those payments together by vendor. So we can just click Create Payments. That will move those on to the In Progress tab. So we can select all and batch submit those for approval right away. Or if we need to make any changes to that payment, we can view the image of the invoices alongside the PO. And we can also see the payment details. So what payment method is being used, we can change that or change which bank account is being drawn from. We can also set that for auto release if we wanted that to be paid automatically. Next, we have our approvals tab. So this is similar to the previous module. Your payment approvers, they can easily go in here and click approve or reject. That will be equivalent of them actually signing off on a check or authorizing that electronic payment to go out. And then once it's been approved, it will flow on to releases, so we can automate this tab. Otherwise, you can select which payments you want to send out and then click release. And this is all managed here within Sage AP Automation. So that means that if you're going to be sending checks, we'll be able to print and mail the check and send it directly to your vendor. It'll still come from your account. There's no holding account involved. And that works the same for electronic payments. So ACH or EFT will go directly to your vendor's bank account. And the virtual credit card can be released again with just a click of a button. And once that is complete, those payments will move into the Pay tab. And this is again where we complete the sync with Sage. So we'll click Export Payment Data. So this will push back into Sage to mark all those invoices as paid. And again, we do have that two-way sync. So in the case of payments, that means if you choose to use some payments to make directly from Sage, that will let AP Automation know, so you won't be prompted to pay those ones twice. All right, and so that's a brief summary of the payments module. Again, we have an archive tab, which will be the historical database of payments. So we covered a quick run through today of all of purchase orders, invoices, and payments. So we'll get back here into our slides, and it looks like we have about 10 minutes left for a question and answer period. So we'll open the floor here for questions and answers as well, hopefully. And I'll leave my contact details up on the slide. So this is how you can reach me, Joey, and my email is here as well. So let's look into the questions. And Kelly, did you want to select some of the questions for us to go through today, or did you want me to choose them?
Yeah. No, let's start right at the top here. So
Excellent.
we have a client looking to see if you can show us best practice for managing old POs that are never used and also deleting an already received PO.
Okay. Perfect. So I'm just trying to understand that a little bit better. So managing old POs that are never used. Um, typically, I guess typically if you have purchase orders, they're being used. Um, Possibly if you were to move over to AP automation, you may just hold those old POs in your archive until you're using an automated solution for your POs, and then you'll actually be able to make use of those POs to match up with your invoices. So possibly if I misunderstood what you were getting at there, I'll leave my email here so we can talk about that in more detail. And then the second part is about deleting already received POs. So if you have POs that are received already, they'll be available for you to see within our system in the archive tab, either in committed or in closed. So that's where you can track all the POs that have been created and also your historical data. So POs can be reset in there if you need to reopen a PO and make changes. They can be resubmitted for approval if they need to be. So you'll have access to make changes to all your POs, even if they've been received, if you need to reset them and make changes. So I think that's how we can answer that question there. And again, if I misunderstood that at all, my contact information is here if you'd like more clarification.
Right now that was the only question.
All right. Well, I think there are some common questions that we get sometimes. So one of the ones that I'll share with you is, in which case would I use a purchase order within your system, or in which case would I use a purchase order that's created within Sage? And so I'll answer that for you. The cases where you'll keep creating your POs within Sage is generally if you are using your purchase orders to track inventory. So in the case where you're typically doing what we call a three-way match, you're matching the invoices with purchase orders as well as something like a receivings document, you'll continue to manage that within Sage. So that means that you'll create the POs within Sage, we'll import them to our system, and then when you receive something like a packing slip or a receipt of goods, that will also be managed within Sage, and we'll be able to import that data into AP automation here in order to facilitate a three-way match. So again, to summarize, if you are using POs to manage inventory and to do a three-way match, we'll be importing those POs from Sage. But if not, or if you just wanted to implement POs for control or for pre-approval or for service-oriented items, you'll be able to create those POs within our system. All right, so that's one of the common questions we get. Another common question is regarding payments. Really, a lot of clients wonder, how do the payments work? Is there a holding account that we have to fund in advance, or how do the checks get issued? So to answer that in a little bit more detail, payments will work very similar to how they do right now, but you won't have to print the checks and sign them. They'll be sent directly from our payment processor with your check encoding on the bottom of the check, and we'll actually create those checks with your authorized signers' signatures appearing on the check as well. So what that means is we don't use any holding account. the checks will come directly from your account, directly to the vendor, and that works the same for ACH and virtual credit card. Those payments will go directly to your vendors. And if you are making 20 payments, let's say 10 of them electronic payments, 10 of them by check, that will still show up on your account summary from your bank as 20 payments. We don't group them together as a lump sum, so you'll be easily able to reconcile your payments.
All right, we did have another question here, Joey. In our business, we do not use POs and really have no need. If we only want to automate the scanning, entering into Sage AP, is this something that can be done?
Great question. So we did cover through the entire purchase order module today that you saw, but you have a great point, is not every business does need purchase orders or has a use for them. So the answer is yes, you can use our system without using purchase orders at all, and even in some cases without using payments at all. So Invoices is really the bread and butter. So we do have a high number of clients that use us just for invoices. Purchase orders are a great tool, and in some cases they fit certain types of businesses. But if your business is not using purchase orders, that's completely fine. You don't need to. You can still create invoices within or manage your invoices within our system without using our PO module at all. In fact, you won't even see it up here if you're not using it.
Okay, that seems to be everything we have right now. So everybody does have Joey's information, and you probably have a favorite consultant here that you can talk to if you should like to see anything further or a customized demo just for you. So feel free to reach out that way. And anything to add there, Joey?
No, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the webinar today. Again, my contact details are up on this slide, or you can reach out to your consultant or whoever you're familiar with working with, and they can put us in contact if you'd like to learn more. We do also offer personalized demonstrations. So as Kelly mentioned, we can schedule a time to work one-on-one with you, and we could go through this demonstration to customize it to what suits your needs specifically. So we do offer those whenever you'd like, so please get in contact with us. We'd be glad to share more about AP automation with you.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Joey, for taking the time today, and your team at Beanworks for making you available. Appreciate that. I know this is a great way to spend an hour, right? And thank you to all the attendees for taking time out of your busy day. I know your time is very valuable. So should you have any questions, you have our contact information, and we'd like to wish you all happy afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.